Council meeting of the 21st of November 2022, which is being held in person, obviously, in the Council chamber at the Civic Centre, Ferris Boulevard, South Morang. I'm Lydia Wilson, Chair of the Panel of Administrators, and I'd also like to introduce my panel colleagues. Firstly, Peter Duncan.
Good evening, everyone.
And Chris Eddy.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, all.
I'd also like to introduce our Chief Executive Officer, Craig Lloyd, and ask that he in turn introduce the members of the Executive Leadership team in attendance today.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to introduce our Director of Community Wellbeing, Kate McCackey, Director of Planning and Development, Justin O'Mara, Director of Customer and Corporate Services, Sarah Renner, Director of Infrastructure and Environment, Debbie Wood, Executive Manager Governance and Strategy, Frank Joyce, and Executive Manager Public Affairs, Janine Morgan. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. On behalf of Council, I recognise the rich Aboriginal heritage of this country and acknowledge the Wurundjeri Willem clan and Tongarong people as the traditional owners of lands within the city of Whittlesea, and I'd also like to pay my personal respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to read at the outset our diversity and good governance statement, and I quote, "At the City of Whittlesea, we are proud of our diversity and the many cultures, faiths and beliefs that make up our community. We strive to be an inclusive, welcoming city that fosters active participation, well-being and connection to each other and this land. We commit as a council to making informed decisions to benefit the people of the City of Whittlesea now and into the future, to support our community's vision of a place for all." We have a number of acknowledgements this evening, and if I could hand over firstly to Administrator Eddy.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we'd like to pass on our congratulations to the 25 members of the local walking football teams who represented the City of Whittlesea on the Gold Coast earlier this month at the Pan-Pacific Masters Games. The Council partners with Whittlesea U3A and Football Victoria with one women's team and one men's team drawn from our local walking football programs, which happen on a Monday. There's a social exercise and walking football program coordinated by our positive ageing team, and there's a Thursday walking football program you might be interested to hear, Chair, and that's coordinated by Whittlesea U3A. Those games had 41 individual and team sports, and there were 13,000 participants there from over 27 countries. So great to see Whittlesea on an international stage in that sense. And I'd just like to make a special mention to the Council's Positive Ageing Officer, Con Constantino, who facilitates the Monday group. But a great effort from those teams to showcase the City of Whittlesea and their skills on the world stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. And if I could hand over to Administrator Duncan now.
Thank you, Chair. It's the theme of the night, Administrator Eddy, a bit more sport. Council's Muslim Women's Golf program is going from strength to strength, and it was actually featured on SBS on a news story recently, which is just fantastic. And the program, which has won the Parks and Leisure Australia Victoria and Tasmania Award for Community-Based Initiative of the Year, and it was created by Council's Leisure and Recreation team in partnership with Golf Australia and the Al Sarat College in Epping. And it provides Muslim women the chance to try a sport that was previously viewed unattainable to them, and it's been hugely popular, which is just fantastic. So well done to Council Leisure Inclusion Officer Megan Harper, and she coordinates the program in partnership with Al Sarat and the Growling Frog Golf Course. So well done to all.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan, and a couple of really brilliant initiatives. I've got a couple of other acknowledgements this evening. Firstly, to That's Amore. Our congratulations go to Giorgio Linguanti, who's the founder of the Thomastown business That's Amore Cheese. Giorgio opened his own business in 2008 to create something that was missing in the Australian market. It's Italian-style cheese produced with the best local ingredients. Today, the company makes over 65 different types of cheese, has a team of over 100 employees and exports to more than 10 countries. Giorgio recently won the Italian Chamber of Commerce and Industry Melbourne Italian Business Award for his excellence in business and the enormous support provided to the Italo-Australian community. We really congratulate sincerely Giorgio. We're very proud of him and his achievements, and that he chose to make the city of Whittlesea the home for his business. And I do also just need to note that he's a very active member of the Whittlesea Business Advisory Panel and makes a huge contribution in general. And my final acknowledgement this evening is in relation to the 16 days of activism. And the campaign for the 16 days of activism begins this Friday, the 25th of November, and it's a time for us to reflect on the impact of gender-based violence in our community. Here in the city of Whittlesea, we've got one of the highest rates of family violence in the state and the highest in the Northern Metropolitan region, which is really quite frightening. And I just wanted to acknowledge the importance of this campaign and the role Council plays in promoting gender equality and working to end gendered violence. Our Gender Equality Action Plan was submitted to the Commission for Gender Equality in the public sector earlier this year, and we're really committed as a council to working with our community to educate, identify and address this really critical issue. They are the 4 acknowledgements that we wanted to make this evening. And now could I note that all administrators are obviously present. Administrators, if you have a conflict of interest in any item on the notice paper, you may verbally disclose the type and nature of the interest now, but you must make a declaration immediately before consideration of the matter in question. Are there any items for which you've got a conflict of interest to declare?
No.
I also have no conflict of interest to declare. I seek a motion to confirm the minutes of the following preceding meeting, which is the scheduled meeting of Council held on the 17th of October 2022. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
Happy to move, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan.
Seconded.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. And I'll now put the matter to a vote. All those in favour of confirming the minutes? The motion is carried. If I could just make a couple of comments before we move into public question time and obviously petitions and joint letters. These aspects are actually embedded within our adopted governance rules, but I just wanted to note that Council allows up to 30 minutes each meeting for members of the public to ask up to 2 questions or read out a petition or joint letter. Now, under our new governance rules, members of the public also have the opportunity to make a statement during this time. The person may make their statement, ask their questions or talk to their joint letter or petition for up to 3 minutes in total, and all statements and questions must be as brief as possible and obviously asked respectfully. Where members of the public do not wish to speak to the matter, the submitted question, statement, petition or joint letter will either be read out by the CEO, by myself or a delegate, and I'll either respond to the question or nominate an administrator or the CEO to respond. And no more than 6 minutes should be spent on any one question. The CEO and I have the ability to decline any questions that relate to matters outside the duties, functions and powers of Council, is discourteous or disrespectful, defamatory or intends to prejudice or insult someone. Priority will be given to questions that relate to an item listed on the agenda and those received prior to 12 p.m. on the day of the Council meeting. All questions will be responded to in writing and included in the minutes of the council meeting. When invited to ask their question, the person must state their name, suburb and any organisation or group they represent prior to asking the question to council. I note that we've got one public question this evening from Nick Brain, and Nick is not in attendance this evening, so I will ask his question on his behalf. And he asks, at its last meeting during public question time, Council indicated it is developing a long-term community infrastructure strategy. What opportunities will there be for local residents and ratepayers to contribute towards its development? And if I could ask our Chief Executive Officer to respond to Nick's question.
Thank you, Chair. Council will be seeking input from key community groups, stakeholders and the broader community as we develop our community infrastructure strategy. We'll also be drawing upon feedback the community has provided recently on our community plan, council budgets, council surveys, specific services, facilities and policy reforms. We will provide opportunities for the community to submit feedback on the draft of the strategy in the second half of 2023 through a comprehensive community-wide multi-channel engagement program. Council is committed to a strong program of community engagement that provides opportunities for the people who live and work in the City of Whittlesea to be involved in helping to shape their local community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. I note this evening that we've also got 2 petitions and 1 joint letter. And again, just to make the point that the lead petitioner will be formally advised of the outcome of this council meeting. And one of our petitioners, Ms Diana Folletti, is here in person and she will be talking to her petition. And if I could invite Diana to come forward and speak to her petition. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. First of all, my name is Diana Folletti. I live in Epping, and right now our local park is in a bit of a derelict state. I think it was built approximately 13 to 15 years ago. But just to give you a bit of perspective, the wooden frame, like when the kids go on there, you get splinters. Some of the rope rungs have been stabilised with masking tape, or some sort of a tape. So, and it's very basic equipment. So right now, there's many more residents apart from the 13 who are in agreement that we would love an upgrade, because many of us are also currently travelling to other parks. So we no longer use that one, and we are now travelling, which is not ideal obviously environmentally, but also we should have the amenities, at hand. So, and not to mention, many of us are right next to Epping Road, so we can't exactly have our kids playing at the front of our houses, and we have the beautiful reserve at the back, and it would be really nice to be able to use it efficiently and bring the community together, because right now, like I said, it's not really happening. So if you can please consider that. I do have photos. I've sent them through to Scott Whitcomb and Susan Hecker earlier in the year, but I'll also send it to you guys so you can please have a look. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, Diana. And I note that, in fact, we've received, your petition is from 13 signatories requesting council to upgrade the playground at Mansfield Park, Epping. And I just wonder whether any of the administrators have any questions to Diana. No? All right, well, could I call for a motion for the petition to be tabled?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move that the Council receive this petition from 13 residents requesting an upgrade at the playground at Mansfield Park, Epping, and note that a meeting with the head petitioner will be organised with the Coordinator of Open Space Planning and the Capital Delivery Team, and a report to Council will be prepared for the March 2023 Council meeting advising of the outcome of the analysis, needs and issues and associated recommendations. And I so move.
Thank you, and I'm very happy to second that recommendation. Would you like to speak to the motion, Administrator Eddy?
Yes, I would briefly, Chair. Firstly, to thank you, Ms Folletti, for coming along and speaking so eloquently towards that request. We certainly hear what you're saying, and we're looking forward to some detailed analysis that the officers will provide for that report that comes to us in March, and we'll look forward to seeing what's possible at that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Administrator Eddy, and I would simply echo those same comments, Diana. Thank you very much for coming along this evening. It's really wonderful to have residents come and present their petitions or joint letters in person. And as I indicated, we will be getting back in touch with you in the short term, and then there'll be the further council report that will be coming to the March 2023 meeting. So thank you again for attending.
Thank you.
I'll now put that motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. We have a second petition which has been received from 12 signatories requesting that Council plant olive trees in the nature strips in Kalorama Place, Thomastown. Administrators, do you have any questions in relation to this petition? If not, I call for a motion for the petition to be tabled.
I'm happy to do that, Chair, and I move to resolve that Council received the petition from 12 residents of Kalorama Place in Thomastown on the 27th of October 2022, requesting planting olive trees on the street nature strips, and note that 1, the trees along Kalorama Place, Thomastown will be reassessed by an independent agricultural consultant to determine their health and useful life expectancy, and 2, there will be further site analysis carried out to determine if there are any other planting opportunities in the nature strips in Kalorama Place, Thomastown. And point 3, I'd like to make an amendment to what is currently up on the screen, and that is a report to Council will be prepared for the March 2023 Council meeting, advising how it is proposed to address the petitioner's concerns. You can take out the "have been addressed."
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Chair. I just look forward to a report that we'll receive in March 2023.
Administrator Eddy?
Ditto, Chair.
I'll now put that motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. We've also, as I indicated earlier, received a joint letter, and the joint letter has been received from 13 students regarding the poor condition of Edgar's Creek. The creek appears to be in poor health. There's an abundance of rubbish, very poor water quality and lack of wildlife. The residents are requesting for Council to place rubbish bins to stop people from littering and no dumping signage, and plant more native trees. I wonder whether I might just ask an initial question of the relevant director who might wish to come forward, Debbie Wood. Thank you, Debbie. I just wonder whether you could perhaps clarify roles and responsibilities, namely in relation to Council's role, Melbourne Water's role. We obviously have got the Mary Creek Committee of Management, and then obviously the City of Whittlesea, Darebin and Moreland also manage the public reserves abutting the creek.
Yes, thanks, Chair. So it is a joint responsibility for care of the creek. So Melbourne Water have responsibility for the waterways themselves. and council do have some responsibilities for the maintenance of the grassed areas up on the banks. We do also work closely with the Merry Creek Management Committee on Eggers Creek and the management of that as well. So it will certainly need to be a joint decision and joint communications about what we do within the creek.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Administrator Eddy.
I have a question, if I may, Chair. If I recall correctly, there's some current consultation going on in relation to placemaking work in Layla and Thomastown. Is this perhaps relevant to that process, Debbie?
Yes, thanks. So yes, there's a currently on exhibition. We'll be closing on the 4th of December. Is the Layla and Thomastown framework, placemaking framework. As part of that, there will be a proposal to have a look at potential master plans along that creek corridor and really green that spine up. So it does form part of that work as well.
Thank you very much, Debbie, for clarifying those questions. I think taking those points into account, I'm happy to move to resolve as follows. That Council, number one, if I could make some further amendments. Number one, receive the joint letter from 13 students at Thomastown Primary School regarding Eggers Creek, and note that a report to Council will be prepared for the March 2023 Council meeting. And two, refers the joint letter to the current community consultation processes for the Layla and Thomastown master planning work. Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. I don't really wish to speak any further. I think that it's really important, given that we've got a major consultation occurring at the moment, this is really relevant to feed into that particular process and for the students to be offered the opportunity to engage with that. Administrator Eddy? I'll now put that motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Administrators will now work through the agenda, commencing with general business. And item 5.1.1, the Ageing Well Continuous Improvement Program. And if I could invite our Director of Community Wellbeing, Kate McCackey, to come forward to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on some significant service planning that we've undertaken in the last 6 to 12 months, and it's now my great pleasure to introduce Lenche Markowska, Manager of Ageing Well. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. So Council delivers a range of Ageing Well services, including Commonwealth and state-funded in-home services, the Regional Assessment Service and Council-funded positive ageing programs. The aged care sector has experienced over the last few years and will continue to experience significant reform. Over the last 18 months, Council, through the Ageing Well Department, has made significant changes to program delivery in response to these changes. Council has developed an Ageing Well Continuous Improvement Program that outlines how Council will continue to provide these services to our community in a changing landscape. It will ensure that Council can continue to deliver core services by focusing on identifying and implementing enhancements as informed by the reforms, continue to support the residents' sense of identity and support them to live independently in their own homes, and deliver timely, high-quality services with focus on wellness. So to this end, we recommend that Council continue to deliver aged care services, including in-home positive ageing programs as described in the Ageing Well Continuous Improvement Program, version 2 and table 3 of the report, and note the City of Whittlesea Ageing Well Continuous Improvement Program decision-making factors and parameters as summarised in Table 3 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Administrators, do you have any questions in relation to this item? Administrator Eddy.
Thank you, Chair. I will start. Thank you for this report. It's such a complex subject. The report goes a long way to, I think, demystifying this space at the moment. I guess my question is, with so many other councils making the decision to move out of this space, how confident are we that we can make the necessary adjustments to remain efficient and competitive in this changing environment?
So I'm here because I am confident that we can continue to make those changes, and the continuous improvement program actually takes into account what we do know, what we anticipate, and we'll continue to work through any new information that comes out. Certainly the work that we've done over the last 18 months has demonstrated that with some changes we certainly can remain relevant in this space.
Any further questions? Administrator Duncan.
So the continuous improvement program will obviously be reviewed as often as it needs to, and have we built in the flexibility that we might need to make changes as we go, depending on the change in the environment for us?
Yes, we have.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. I'm happy to move the officer recommendation for item 5.1.1, but with a further part 3, which really in essence picks up on the point that Administrator Duncan's just touched on, which is that Council Part 3 receives a further progress report in relation to the Ageing Well Continuous Improvement Program in October 2023, roughly in 1 year's time. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. In speaking to this item, I'm really pleased to be moving this report and the officer recommendations with that extra recommendation. The report clearly indicates our census figures. So currently, 2021, we've got some 29% of the total population of Whittlesea aged 50 plus. And the projection is that that population is going to increase over the next 20 years by an additional 47,000 people. That's huge. You've touched on, Lenshay and Administrator Eddy, that there certainly have been some ongoing funding issues for Victorian councils in the delivery of aged care services. And the benchmarking data clearly shows that there's not one position in relation to delivery of home care, social support and health and wellbeing programs, and a number of councils have obviously contracted out of direct service delivery in this area. And it's clear to me that the Commonwealth's aged care reform agenda has in itself created a lot of uncertainty for councils in relation to future directions. I wanted to acknowledge the work of council officers over the past few years to improve the way that we operate, and clearly further improvements are outlined in Table 3 of the officer report to ensure that our services remain viable into the future. The planned actions against many aged services in that attachment, Table 3, is shown as continue and adapt on many of the different service types. And it's my view that we must really continue to drive further innovation, improvement, efficiency, while also focusing on customer experience. I'm in really strong support of this, the officer recommendations, as I really believe that it's critical that we continue providing services supporting the health and wellbeing of our growing older population, just like we continue to provide services such as maternal and child health or library services. And this guarantees that services will be available to City of Whittlesea residents. who are also potentially more vulnerable. I note from the statistics within the report that we are a trusted and well-respected service provider of aged care, and people clearly have confidence in council providing services in this area. So I congratulate again the Ageing Well team for all the work that's happened to date, and look forward to the further progress report in October 2023. Thank you. Administrator Eddy.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you've touched on a couple of the points that I was going to make, and I will make again because I think they bear repeating. I think I agree with you. I'm very proud to be part of this decision, which at this point in time sends a strong message of confidence and certainty to our community. As the Chair said, there's a high level of satisfaction with the delivery of these services, not just in the City of Whittlesea, but generally where they are delivered by local government. Unfortunately, some councils have been in the position of needing to make difficult decisions to exit, and they have not always got, as we've seen in the press recently, the results that they thought they were going to get. So I think the longer that we can maintain in this space, given that it is a changing environment, I make the point that many thought a change of federal government, a flavour if you like, might bring a change in this space. It's clearly not going to happen, not anytime soon anyway. So as I say, the longer that we can provide that certainty and security in an environment of ongoing review for changing circumstances, and we all understand things can change, and we might be back here looking at this in another 12 months and things could be different. Hopefully they won't. So really supportive of sending this strong message of confidence and certainty. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. Administrator Duncan.
I concur with yourself and Administrator Eddy, and just my real statement is that I think, as we know, Council has a very good reputation in delivering these services, and it's incumbent on us to look after the vulnerable in our community, and that obviously is our ageing population as well as others. And I think who better knows our residents than we do, so congratulations to everybody.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. If we move to item 5.2.1, Planning Scheme Amendment C245, Heritage Overlay on 90 and 150C, formerly 100, Bints Road, Wollert, Exhibition Outcomes and Request for Panel. And if I could ask our Director of Planning and Development, Justin O'Mara, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to introduce Julie Paget, our Strategic Planner, who's going to provide a brief overview of the report and recommendation. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. I present to you this report on Planning Scheme Amendment C245. The amendment seeks to apply the heritage overlay permanently to a place of local heritage significance known as Ewitts Farm at 90 Bints Road, and to correct an identification error of a heritage place to which the heritage overlay already applies, being Bints Farm at 150C Bints Road. Amendment C245 was placed on public exhibition between the 21st of January and 5th of March 2021, and 2 submissions were received. A submission from the Department of Transport opposed the heritage overlay on a section of land covered by a public acquisition overlay for the future outer Metropolitan Ring Road. After seeking expert heritage advice, officers recommended the overlay be removed from the public acquisition overlay area, as shown in attachment 2 of the report, which will resolve this submission. The other submission was on behalf of the landowner of both of the Bint Road sites, which sought to reduce the heritage overlay further, limiting it to the general area of the farmhouse and outbuildings. Negotiations are ongoing with the landowner, as expert heritage advice does not support any further reduction to the overlay. Potential solutions to address their concerns are being addressed, are being explored, and officers are hopeful that the submission may still be resolved. In the meantime, the interim heritage overlay at 90 Bints Road, which was put in place to allow the permanent controls to be progressed, will expire on the 21st of January 2023. Amendment C245 will also lapse on this date unless an extension is granted. Officers have discussed a potential extension request with the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, who have indicated in principle support. The report recommends that Council request a planning panel to consider the outstanding submission, but that negotiations also be allowed to continue to try to resolve the landowner submission. It also recommends that requests be made to extend both Amendment C245 for the permanent heritage overlay and the interim heritage overlay to ensure heritage protection for the site. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie, for that very comprehensive overview. Administrators, do you have any questions? Administrator Eddy?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Julie. You've answered some of the questions that I had. I take it from your comments that we haven't had a last-minute resolution of the submission from Urbis on behalf of the landowner.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. I'm happy to start the answer on that question. So we have, as Julie mentioned, we haven't yet reached an agreeable outcome that meets both the needs of the requirements of the planning scheme amendment, but also the planning scheme itself. So both council officers and Urbis, acting on behalf of the landowner, are still in active discussions, and they'll continue. So there's still options we're exploring, and if they come to fruition, we won't need to proceed with the panel hearing.
So I'm mindful of the timing here, Justin, with an election on foot. We don't have a Minister for Planning at the moment, effectively, and this is pretty tight with the amendment due to lapse in the third week of January.
Yep.
Worst case scenario, what happens if that extension cannot be granted in time?
Look, worst case scenario, we believe that by January there will be a Minister for Planning in place because the election will happen on the 26th of November. However, if worst case scenario, if there's no Minister for Planning for whatever reason, we would be working with the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning to seek their advice on what delegated authority senior officers at the department have. They may have the ability to extend existing controls that are in place, in this instance the interim heritage controls.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Any further questions? Do I have a mover then for the officer recommendation for item 5.2.1?
So moved.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. And a seconder?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. Administrator Eddy, would you like to speak to the item?
Very briefly, Chair, as we've just heard, there's really two significant issues here. One, the requirement for a planning panel because we have an unresolved submission, but as we've heard, hopefully negotiations might bear fruit and that panel won't be required, but we do need to take the necessary steps in case. And the other is, of course, the potential expiry of the current matter and the need for a planning minister to grant an extension. So I thank the officers for their work on this. Some sleepless nights, hopefully not too many ahead for you, and let's hope we can get this resolved soon.
Thank you for that. Any further questions? Oh, sorry. Would the seconder like to speak to the item? In that case, I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Item 5.2.2, telecommunication facility at 54 Main Street, Thomastown. And again, Justin, if I could ask you to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to introduce Lachlan Yule, our Planning Officer, who's going to provide a brief overview of the report and recommendation. Thanks, Lachlan.
Cool. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Justin. So this is an application by Optus for the construction of a telecommunications facility at the Main Street Recreation Reserve at 54 Main Street in Thomastown. This facility consists of a 30-metre tall monopole and equipment cabinet. Public notification for this application was undertaken and 2 objections were received, including a petition with a total of 146 signatures. The objections related to the health concerns associated with increased telecommunications coverage. Officers are supportive of the proposal as the facility will provide important telecommunications services to the Thomastown and Lalor area, The essential service will provide benefits to the wider community, including businesses and residents, depending on reliable services. The facility is compliant with the stringent requirements developed by the Australian Radiation Protection and Nuclear Safety Agency and mandated by the Australian Communications and Media Authority. In this case, the facility reaches only 2.1% of the maximum 100% of allowable radiation exposure at 1.5 metres above ground level. The facility is required to comply with these requirements at all times, and as such, the facility will not have any impact on human health on the surrounding community. So the facility has been located appropriately as to best minimise impacts on existing facilities, heritage places and surrounding uses. Given the nature of the facility, it is not possible for it to be entirely screened from view. However, being located 80 metres from the closest dwelling, in a space opposite car parking and in an area of existing vegetation, this reduces the visual impact of the facility appropriately and is consistent with the requirements of the Code of Practice for Telecommunications Facilities in Victoria. It is for these reasons, of which the officer's recommendation for this application is it be approved, subject to conditions as per the officer report. The proposal appropriately responds to the requirements of the Whittlesea Planning Scheme, in particular Clause 52.19 for telecommunications facilities and the Code of Practice for Telecommunications Facilities. The facility satisfactorily complies with the allowable radiation exposure and is located appropriately, providing essential telecommunication services to the wider Thomastown and Lalor areas.
Thank you very much, Lachlan. Administrators, do you have any questions in relation to this item?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan.
Thank you, Lachlan. I notice in here that we did have community consultation that occurred with the head objector or head of the petition. Could you just clarify for me, because I understand that you've put additional conditions in to address those issues. Can you just clarify what the recommendations are that have been added to address those issues?
I'll ask Lachlan to answer this question. Thanks, Lachlan.
Thanks, Mr Duncan. So conditions 4, 8 and 9 of the officer report directly address the concerns of the residents. These require the provision or them to provide EMA reports evidencing that they are, in fact, in compliance with the regulations and requirements of the Australian Communications and Media Authority. Condition 8 specifically requires co-location, so this ensures that no additional infrastructure is required elsewhere in the surrounding area and ensures that future carriers can obviously use that infrastructure. And then as well is that low-impact facilities are only allowed on this monopole. Obviously, with our consent, we are allowed to then obviously have additional carriers if need be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. Administrator Eddy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to clarify also, we're talking about potential health impacts, or at least the objectors were. Am I reading correctly that this facility will emit 2.1% of what is allowed, as in 2.1 of 100%? So that's, I think you used the word satisfactorily meets the standard, but it seems to me that that's very low.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. Yes, that's a good term, very low, because it's exactly how you explained it. The Australian Communications and Media Authority, which is the federal government department that's responsible for electromagnetic energy standards across all of Australia, including mobile phone towers. They're the regulator, not council. We're required to follow their regulations. In this instance, of the 100% that ACMA would allow for this type of facility, this proposal comes in at 2.1% of that allowable 100%. So it's 97.9% below the maximum that's allowed. So it's well and truly within the limits.
So you could say it's almost negligible, but I won't ask you to comment on that. Do we have any other facilities of this type in the City of Whittlesea?
Yes, we do. We have a number of monopole structures providing mobile phone services right across the municipality. So this is not a new thing. There are a number of these already that exist within the municipality. In fact, right across metropolitan Melbourne and rural areas and Australia-wide.
I suspected that might be the case. So I note that once installed, there needs to be a qualified assessment done, that it's meeting those standards. The thought that occurred to me is, does that ever get checked further down the track, or is it a one-off assessment at the time of installation?
The proposed conditions that Lachlan outlined at a high level, one of the conditions does state that upon request by council, we can ask for further reports to be done if we foresee a need for those for a further assessment to be undertaken. The other trigger that would need another assessment to be undertaken is if other carriers propose to co-locate on that facility with low-impact facilities. So if additional services went on there from other providers, that would trigger another assessment to be undertaken as well.
And have we ever had cause to trigger assessments on any of the other facilities in the city?
To provide you with any specifics, I'd need to take that on notice, but it is standard practice where additional facilities are proposed to be co-located on the existing facility for further assessments to be undertaken to ensure that that regulation set by ACMA is met. So, yeah, that would be a requirement, yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you for clarifying all those questions. Any further questions, Administrator Duncan? No. So do I have a mover then for the officer recommendation for item 5.2.2?
Yes, Chair, happy to move that.
Thank you, Administrator
Seconded.
Duncan. Thank you, Administrator Eddy. Would you like to speak to
No,
the
thank
item?
you. I think that's pretty clear now. Thanks.
Administrator Eddy?
Thank you, Chair. Look, just to note that I think the officers have done a very thorough assessment of this. There is a very clear process in place to not only assess and certify at the outset, but also, if a need arises, to trigger further assessments. And I'm confident that if that need arises, we would do that, considering we're talking about the potential impact on human health. But I'm satisfied with the recommendation.
Thank you. So on that note, I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Item 5.2.3, Gorge Road Shops Streetscape Draft Concept Community Engagement. And if I could ask our Director of Infrastructure and Environment, Debbie Wood, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. A really exciting piece of work thought by the team for Gorge Road for us to go out on community engagement with some proposals of the site. But I will like to introduce Andrew Chow, our Senior Landscape Architect, who will just briefly overview the report and the recommendations. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Debbie. Gorge Road Shops is one of the first commercial areas as you enter the city of Whittlesea from the east. The shops are identified in the Town Centre Revitalisation Program as a priority project with a high level of opportunity for improvement. The shops face the Department of Transport managed Gorge Road, have existing angled parking at the front managed by the City of Whittlesea, additional parking behind in a formal car park, and an informal gravel area also used as a car park. Behind all the car parking is Reed Street Park, and that also has a kindergarten and playground. Early community consultation indicates there is an appetite to see change in the precinct by both the broader community and the traders. In particular, changes to the angled parking to eliminate dangerous illegal turns and to improve drivers' safety when reversing out. In addition, there is a desire for beautification of the precinct to lift the tired and outdated public realm. We have developed a draft concept design for the Gorge Road shops with consideration of early community consultation, empirical traffic and parking data, and site-specific limitations. We've spoken to key stakeholders such as traders, business owners, and have also circulated the draft to property owners for feedback. Initial conversations with these key stakeholders are positive, with concerns mostly around the construction staging and disruption. We are seeking council endorsement for public exhibition and consultation of the draft concept design and to commence community consultation and engagement activities.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And I might just ask an initial question and preface my question by saying that all of the administrators actually went out on site, and we're very appreciative of the opportunity to have that site meeting with yourself. And we did have the opportunity to engage with one of the local traders at the time that we were down there. Could you just elaborate a little bit more in relation to phase 1 of community consultation, where you indicate you've had in-person meetings with local traders? So seeing that strip of shops, can you just elaborate a little bit further on the extent of that community consultation?
I'll let Andrew respond to that question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. And Debbie. We met every trader, so we had multiple opportunities. It was the beginning of, towards the tail end of the COVID restrictions, so we had a workshop initially, an online workshop that they were available to attend. We had smaller numbers attend that than we would have preferred. Following that, restrictions lifted and we were able to actually go out to the shops and actually talk to the traders one-on-one. We met pretty much every trader on the street at their shop, which in their own time allowed them to provide us feedback without having any kind of other distractions.
Thank you. Really great to hear that you met with every trader and had the one-on-one meeting. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but would it be true to say that the feedback that was provided that could be even seen as negative was only in relation to the timing of construction and any disruption to their business operations, and obviously the potential loss of car parking, which in the officer report is not the case?
That is correct. The main concerns from all the traders was the potential for disruption during construction and whether or not they had to close during that time, at which point we reiterated that we would maintain access to their shops at all times.
Thank you very much. Debbie?
I might just add that we have done these type of projects previously, and we have tried to accommodate as much as we can traders when we undertake these bits of work. So it is something that we have done, and it's something that we'll do in similar ways.
Thank you. Other questions, administrators?
Will the final design plan be coming back to council?
Yes, the final design plan will be coming back to council before it progresses to the next stage of construction documentation.
Thank you. Administrator Eddy?
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question. In the report, it talks about the staging. Stage 1 would be first, Stage 3 would be second, and Stage 2 would be third in 2024-25. If I'm understanding this correctly, I wonder whether it would be possible to adjust that wording or clarify that so that there's no confusion when the plan goes out to the community, because Stage 1, 2 and 3 implies that order. Thank you.
I'll actually let Andrew just respond to that.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. That is indeed an error, and so we will be fixing that. It is actually supposed to be 23, 24 for that Stage 2 as well. Thank you.
Well, good you clarified that. Thank you, Administrator Eddy. Any further questions? I'm really happy to move the officer recommendation for item 5.2.3. Do I have a seconder?
Sure, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. Obviously, this report and its recommendations is seeking our endorsement for the Gorge Road draft streetscape plan to go out on further community consultation, and we'd obviously really encourage businesses and community members to engage in this particular plan. And there's no doubt that the plan is designed to transform what can only be seen as a somewhat dated Gorge Road shopping precinct into a much more attractive retail destination. And that's the benefit of actually going out on site and having a look at the configuration of the car parking, the pedestrian areas and so forth. You've already indicated that there's been extensive public consultation earlier this year just to get to this stage, which is the draft concept plan. And clearly what this would deliver is some really great improvements to safety and accessibility for drivers, pedestrians and shoppers, making sure that there's no overall loss of car parking, some reconfiguration at the front and at the rear, and obviously fixing up the potholes and so forth, making it a much more enjoyable and vibrant experience for everyone. And also lastly, the vastly improved streetscape appeal with the canopy trees, the much wider footpath and new street furnishings to replace what is somewhat outdated existing furniture. And obviously as a council, and you highlighted, Debbie, that we're very conscious of ensuring that the redevelopment is rolled out in such a manner as to minimise any disruption, particularly to the businesses in that area. And I just simply wanted to end on another note of appreciation to our council officers, both for the manner of the conduct of the consultation, as you indicated, to each and every trader in that area, but also just for your success in receipt of the funding grants, which are really quite substantial from the Growing Suburbs Fund, $425,000, and Living Local Suburban Grant of $200,000. It's really excellent that we're securing government grants for these really important projects. And I look forward to hearing the outcomes of the final phase of consultation. So thank you. Administrator Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've summed that up beautifully. There is no doubt that that area does need an injection of wow factor and a facelift to support the traders and their customers. But I also wanted to comment that it's not as though we've just left it be, because you did put in outdoor seating during COVID, but it's now just rejigging the whole thing, and also the safety issue with the car park at the back I think is very important as well, not just for the traders but their customers as well. So I concur with the Chair, but well done. I think you've done an exceptional job on the way you've gone about this.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. And Administrator Eddy wants to make some comments too.
I do, because there's been a missed opportunity here on your part, Chair, and Administrator Duncan. No one has commented on the obvious. This place needs some love, and this plan will make it more gorgeous. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Administrator Eddy. On that note, I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you again. Item 5.2.4, the draft Quarry Hills Parklands Future Directions Plan. And again, Debbie, if I'd invite you to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. Quarry Hills is one of our highlights, really, of open space, and it's really important that we make sure we have a directions plan for that space. And really, we've worked in collaboration with a number of people to get to this point. But I do have Susan Hecker here with me, the Unit Manager of Landscape and Open Space Planning, who will just give a brief overview of the report and outline the Office's recommendations. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Debbie. It is with great pleasure that I present to Council the Quarry Hills Parklands Draft Future Direction Plan. The Council adopted open space strategy recognises the parkland as our premier regional park classified as conservation reserve. The parklands is one of the defining landscape features of the municipality, planned to grow to 1,100 hectares. It'll be home to a number of new facilities, including Granite Hills Community Playground and Aboriginal Gathering Place. The Parkland Strategic Plan is now 22 years old and a new contemporary plan is required. The new Future Direction Strategic Plan contains a vision that lays the foundations for a strong set of objectives, future direction statements and actions. So the vision for the Parklands is a rich and inspiring destination of unique natural and cultural landscapes. It's valued for the ecological, spiritual and historical and living connections that it provides to Aboriginal people and the broader community. The Parklands is a place of active reconciliation, storytelling and healing where community can explore and celebrate the unique cultural and ecological significance of the landscape, and the Aboriginal people can practice connection to country. The vision also states that Quarry Hills Regional Parklands is a special place of recreation, protection and renewal, a place to learn, explore culture, art and environment, and to connect with the exceptional natural and curated features of the parkland for all generations to come. So the draft Future Directions Plan before you provides a visionary agenda which has been developed through rigorous consultation with key stakeholders in partnership with the Wurundjeri Wurrung landowners and the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. The plan is informed by the Wurundjeri Wurrung Cultural Values Study and sets a strong program to meet Whittlesea 2040 community goals. We now wish to hear from the broader community and seek endorsement to take the draft Future Directions Plan to public consultation during the period of 28th of November 2022 into next year, the 20th of January 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Administrators, do you have any questions? I think Administrator Eddie does.
I do, thank you. This is terrific, and I will, if I have the opportunity to speak to this, say a bit more shortly. But my only concern is the timing of the consultation, given that it won't go out until the end of November. We know how busy people are in December, and then many people might potentially miss this in the first part of the new year. So I guess my question is, what are we doing to absolutely maximise the opportunity to make people aware of this, because it would be a shame if we didn't get the input it deserves?
Thank you, Administrator Eddie. Agree, it's a really important piece of work that we want to get as much engagement as we can. We have extended, so you'll see it's a 6 weeks period, noting that Christmas is in there, which will shorten that and people are busy. But we do have a really thorough communication plan, and I'll let Susan talk to that a little bit more.
Thank you.
So yes, the thorough communications plan really is a lot of what Council does usually anyway, which is have a good media approach. We also having some pop-up sessions, and we're hoping to take residents into the park and to have a look at the park, give them some more in-depth understanding of the parklands and the Wurundjeri study that's been undertaken. We also have written to landowners in the area as well and advised them of this. We've had also some key stakeholders that were part of our recent focus groups, and we'll be also inviting them to come along, and those people, a lot of them were part of bigger groups, so local friends groups and other social groups, and so we'll be asking them to share that with their networks as well.
Susan, can I just pick up on a point that Administrator Eddie made? There'll be the ability for people to submit comments via our Engage online portal as well. That's correct?
Yes, that's correct, yes. And we have a survey as well, I should have mentioned, and this
it gives people the opportunity to answer the survey, but to also provide comments as well. We also have a pin drop feature on the website, which actually allows people to identify areas where they would actually specifically like to make comment.
Thank you. Sorry, Administrator Eddy. Did you have further questions? Administrator Duncan? If not, do I have a mover for the officer recommendation for item 5.2.4?
So moved.
Thank you, and I'm very happy to second the officer recommendation. Administrator Eddy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, look, this is very exciting and significant, as has been mentioned. It's one of the surprises that I enjoyed when I first came to be involved here at the City of Whittlesea, this extraordinary part of the municipality, which I think ultimately is going to cover something like 1,100 hectares, which is 2.3% of the municipality. And as has been mentioned, a number of new facilities will be housed there, including our Aboriginal gathering place and the Granite Hills playground. If you haven't been to see it, I thoroughly recommend that you do, and I'm sure as a result of this work a lot more people will discover it. This draft plan, as has also been mentioned, has been developed in partnership with the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation and the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. And what we have really is a very exciting vision to guide the long-term plan for this area. If the existing plan or strategy was 22 years old, it's certainly overdue to have a fresh and modern vision for this. I remain concerned about the timing of the consultation, given the time of year. I am satisfied that a lot of those boxes are being ticked with all of those different ways of engaging that have been outlined. I would simply suggest and hope that if we get towards the 20th of January and we're disappointed with the lack of engagement, I don't think that's at all a poor reflection on the community. I think the time of year is going to be challenging, and I'd just like us to keep a watching brief on that if we can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Administrator Eddy. In seconding the officer recommendation, I'd only just echo Administrator Eddy's comments. And Susan, you made the comment about what a special place Quarry Hills Parklands are, and that is certainly the case. And this is really about setting a new vision and objective for the parklands and ensuring that our community really feed into that process. I just wanted to note that the partnership with the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, I think is really critical. It's been great to have them on board as a partner, but I think even into the future, it's really great to have the department sitting alongside ourselves, given that we will be advocating to both levels of government in relation to additional funding contribution. So I think it's a really very important strategic thing to have them and working with us so closely. We really would love to hear the views of our community in relation to this really incredibly important piece of work. And I think to Administrator Eddy's comment about the period of the community consultation, it is longer, obviously, because it takes account of the Christmas New Year period. But I think we just need to be guided by council officers if we're finding that we need to extend the community consultation period beyond that 20th of January close-off period. And again, I just thank council officers for their efforts to date and the partnership with the department so far. Thank you. Administrator Duncan?
I think between yourself and Administrator Eddy, you've said everything that needs to be said.
Thank you. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you again. Okay. Item 5.2.5, joint letter road upgrade Milky Lane to Wildwood Road, Whittlesea. And Debbie, if I could again invite you to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to introduce Arishdeep Singh, our Manager of Urban Design and Transport, who will give a brief overview of the report and the officer's recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Just talking about the petition, we received about a petition from 11 residents of Milky Way, Willowwood Road and other adjacent roads requesting Milky Lane, Willowwood Road to be upgraded. Upgraded means is taken as sealed here. And the petitioners have raised concerns about increased traffic, use of road by heavy vehicles and narrow winding carriageway in Milky Lane section. Milky Lane, Willowwood Road is 5.8 kilometres long with sealed sections on the both ends, 1.8 kilometres on the western side and about 250 to 300 metres on the eastern side. The gravel section of Milky Lane, Willowwood Road provides primary access to about 20 properties directly from the road, but there are other additional properties that are located off the courts from this road, Dales Road, Latcham Lane and Godding Court. From traffic and safety conditions point of view, there has been a gradual increase of traffic over years. Like we have got a traffic counts all the way from 1970s to 2022. So from 1970s, it was 80 to 120 vehicles per day. So now, with the recent counts, it was 250 vehicles in 2022, which was done in the last couple of months. The speed is a default 100 kilometres an hour, and the speeds that has been noted there varied from 50 to 90 kilometres for 85th percentile, with speeds higher on sealed sections. There has been one casualty crash in the last 5 years on the record in 2018 that required hospitalisation, leading to 0.036 crash per kilometre. The Milky Lane, Wildwood Road, it falls in the local roads category for council for both traffic volumes and the serviceability. The current routine maintenance regime is deemed to provide an adequate level of safety and service levels for this road. As such, I'd like to put forward the recommendation that council note the sealing of Milky Lane, Wildwood Road is not currently necessary, and that council continue to maintain the road as per the requirements of road management plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Arishdeep. I'm going to throw open to administrators for any questions, but before I do, I am just going to note that all three administrators have actually been out on site, and I've certainly driven the full length of that road. Administrators, questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I did go for a drive on Milky Lane. It's very easy to say Milky Way in this case. I can't imagine anyone could do 100 k's on that road at the moment, given its state. And yes, it's certainly in a poor state. What was occurring to me, though, how many other roads do we have like this in Whittlesea? What is our kilometerage, if that's a word, of unsealed roads? Ms. Wood.
Thanks, Administrator Eddie. We have approximately about 85 kilometre-ish, is that what you said, of road, which is obviously it's a fair bit of roads that we have to consider and prioritise. And just the condition, as you know, we have had a lot of wet weather, which is causing issues with our gravel roads at the moment, but we have got our grading program that we're trying to keep up and get those back up to standard after the storms that we've had.
So how often would a road like this be graded?
This one is programmed to be graded quarterly. I think it's 4 times a year. Obviously, we need to do that a little bit quicker at the moment to get it back up to where it needs to be, and then it will go back to the 4 times a year.
And from a cost perspective, I think I read that over the course of 30 years it would cost $1 million. That's obviously in today's dollars. To do what the petitioners are asking for, what sort of financial commitment would be required?
I'll pass that one to Arishdeep.
So there are two ways of sealing that road. One is about the spray seal. If we're doing the spray seal, it will cost us about 3.5 mil. That will give us life of about 3 to 5 years. And if we go with the full construction, that will cost us up to about $15 million.
Just one more question, if I may. In terms of those, that 85 kilometres of unsealed roads, I mean, we see in this report where this sits in terms of volumes and crash rates, and it's pretty low. What about in terms of priority against the rest of those 85 kilometres that might need some sort of upgrade at some point in the future?
So this will rank as a medium to low priority compared to others. Like, we don't have full data of all the roads, but one road I can give an example is which we do compare most of the roads is Mason Road. Mason Road, the crash rate is 0.15 per kilometre, and the vehicle numbers, they are about 4 times of this road.
Could I just jump in with a couple of additional questions, picking up on Administrator Eddy's questions? So there was an audit that was undertaken in 2019 regarding different measures that might be implemented, and officers essentially implemented the required recommendations that came out of that audit. In reading the report, having been down out on site, and to Administrator Eddy's comment about even that 100k, I just can't imagine that 100k. But there was also some concerns that there's increased traffic, particularly when the Whittlesea show is occurring. Are there any additional measures that we could implement to address any of the resident concerns?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The one thing that we can implement is we can undertake another road safety audit. That's the one thing we can definitely see, and about improved signage and all that. Just in regards to the Whittlesea show traffic, well, unfortunately we haven't got a data about that. So we are planning to do the traffic surveys at next Whittlesea show in January.
Okay.
Over this road.
Okay. And roughly when are you thinking? Are you thinking that you do the audit, given that the Whittlesea show is now announced as being in January? Yeah. Will you be doing the auditing or looking at different traffic management options associated with this current show that's coming up?
We will definitely be doing the traffic counts on the current show, and we will compare that to the regular traffic, and then put some measures in place for next steps.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Other questions? Administrator Duncan?
Yes, Chair, just following on from that. So you'll do the traffic count for this year's Whittlesea show. Once you understand what that is, will you then use that data to perhaps do some traffic management for the Country Music Festival?
Yeah, definitely we will take that on board.
Because you should know then it's going to be the same sort of crowd, I would have thought.
Yep. So what we can also do is implement. So what we can also do is implement the grading program accordingly. So if the additional traffic damages the road, we will get the grading program adjusted accordingly.
So the main thing that the traffic counts will do, it will actually tell us if it is peaking during those periods, because we're not sure. That's obviously, we've been told that it does, but the traffic counts will tell us if it does, and then that way we'll know if we need to do some alternate traffic management during those peak periods. I think that's what it will tell us. Does that make more sense? Yeah.
And I've just got another question, because we've been out gallivanting there, we're all over this. So obviously we've had unprecedented, really bad weather. I'm just wondering, is the condition of the road worse than it would normally be, or are we maintaining a good grading when the weather is normal?
The conditions of most of our gravel roads at the moment aren't to the standard that they would normally be, just due to the rain that we've had. So we are aware of that, and as I said before, we are trying to get our grading program back up to where it needs to be.
Administrator Eddy.
Sorry, I do have a follow-up question. I do note also Administrator Duncan's use of the term gallivanting, which I think technically means bumping along a 100k gravel road with lots of potholes. But my question was really about what other roads in that area might see increased traffic with these various events that are happening, such as the show and the Country Music Festival. I'm just keen to make sure that we're taking a more holistic view of that area rather than just the one road covered by this petition.
I might actually, because I know that the CEO is all over this one, and the importance of proper traffic management with those major events. So I'm going to hand over to Craig.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important to note that particularly on the Whittlesea show weekend, all of our roads become congested, but there isn't any real evidence that this road gets any more congested than any others. Just to pick up a couple of other points that have been made too, is that whilst the default speed limit for country roads in Victoria, unsealed country roads in Victoria, is 100 kilometres an hour, that doesn't mean that's the safe limit to drive. It's about driving to the conditions that present to you at the time. Other thing I'd just like to note is that a safety review may well result in recommendations to lower the speed limit on that road, and that's something that the residents need to understand. Thank you.
I'm terribly sorry to do it, but I do have one final, may not be final question. I just note that the officer recommendation in part 2, to quote, is to continue to maintain the road as per the requirement of the road management plan. And I just wonder whether you could elaborate, and I think it's important we do so even for the purposes of the minutes, on what exactly that means.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. For unsealed roads, there are two criteria. One is when potholes, scarring or roughness goes greater than 100 mm depth. So this is measured over 1.2 metres. The requirement for these roads which fall under access category is 10 weeks. And the second criteria is when continuous corrugations over 20 metres exceed in depth of more than 50 mm. The rectification requirement as per the road management plan is within 16 weeks.
I see our Executive Manager Governance desperately trying to record this, because I think it's going to be really important to capture that in the minutes as a record of this meeting and the response. Thank you. I daren't ask if there's any further questions. If not, do I have a mover for the officer recommendation for item 5.2.5, noting that obviously there will be that further road safety audit and a bit of a review of signage and so forth?
I'm happy to move this, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. And a seconder? Thank you, Administrator Eddy. Would the mover or the seconder like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Chair.
Administrator Eddy, it looks like you would like to speak to this item.
No, I think we've well covered the issues in our questioning, and I'll leave it at that.
On that note, I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Arishdeep. Item 5.2.6, petition, a request to extend footpath along Whittlesea Road, Whittlesea. And again, Debbie, if I could ask you to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. And I have Arishdeep here with me still, who will just talk through the details of the report and the recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. The Council received a petition from 14 residents of Caudle Court, Whittlesea, requesting footpath along Whittlesea Road to be extended from Jennifer Court to Caudle Court. The petitioners requested to construct an all-weather path to connect Caudle Court residents to the rest of the township through active travel infrastructure. The petitioner detailed that the path would provide health benefits, connection to amenities, provide an all-weather safe travel path for children, parents with prams, and residents with wheelchairs. Whittlesea Road is a declared arterial road owned and maintained by the Department of Transport, connecting northern Melbourne metropolitan area to rural townships. The road is rural in nature with wide verges, especially on the eastern side, with no footpaths on either side of the road at this location. Caudal Code itself, where the petitioners reside, has got 9 properties and has a footpath constructed along Caudal Code, but that stops at Whittlesea Road, creating a missing link of 380 metres in length between Caudal Code and Jennifer Court, which is further south. These are continuous footpath connections from there onwards to the Whittlesea Township's centre. Council, and a little bit of information about the Council's program for footpaths. The Council constructs footpaths within the municipality as part of Missing Links program, informed by prioritisation matrix. Prioritisation matrix takes into consideration access to open spaces, other amenities, schools, public transport, connection to services. So this section of footpath is included in Missing Links list for future programs and will be delivered as part of that program. I'd like to put forward the recommendation to refer the construction of this section of footpath for consideration as part of Council's 2023-24 financial year budget process. Thank you.
Thank you. I might just start off with an initial question, which really is how much funding do we have in that Missing Footpath Links program, and how many projects are currently within the program?
So currently we have got $250,000 in the funding. Talking about the programs on the list, we have got 125 projects, with out of them about 34 are less than 150 metres, and the rest of them are over 150 metres in length. They add up to about, I think, 31 or 32 kilometres in length.
Thank you, Arishdeep. Additional questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, to pick up where you were going with that, your report says this particular missing link would be a medium to long-term priority. That's, I assume, based on the 250k per annum that we put into the Missing Links program. Where is it in the list in terms of those 125 is what I'm trying to get a sense of.
It's number 55.
It's number 55, so it's roughly in the middle. I'd just sort of flag perhaps at budget consideration time, Chair, that we seriously consider whether 250k is the right figure for that Missing Link program, because it's going to take quite some time to get to it by my calculations based on current circumstances, correct? Thank you.
Additional questions? No? If there's no additional questions, I'm happy to move the officer recommendation for 5.2.6. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Administrator Eddy. I'm not going to really speak at any length to the recommendations in this report, because I think the critical issue is that this particular petition is being referred to the council budget for the next year, and I think we've just got to have the discussion and the debate at that time in relation to our deliberations of the capital expenditure and operational budget. Administrator Eddy.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, I would like to thank the petitioners for bringing this issue more broadly to our attention. I'm very sympathetic to the request, but it's one of those wicked problems, I guess, where we'd like to do everything that people ask us, but we've got to fit it in the overall envelope. So I support those comments about having a good look at this when it comes to budget deliberations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 5.4.1, Sustainable Environment Strategy Suite. And again, I'll be inviting Debbie to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. This is a really important piece of work that's been undertaken by the officers. It's three parts. So the Sustainable Environment Strategy, the Climate Action Plan, and also our 2-year action plan. So I have with me today Amanda Dodd, our Manager of Sustainable Environment, who will just run through the details of the report and also the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. On behalf of the project team, I am very excited to bring forward this report to seek Council's adoption of the City of Whittlesea Sustainable Environment Strategy, the Climate Change Plan, and to seek endorsement of the actions within the 2-year Sustainable Environment Strategy Action Plan. This follows our last stage of community consultation on the draft documents. The Sustainable Environment Strategy has synthesised Council's endorsed positions from a number of plans: the Rethinking Waste Plan, Greening Whittlesea, Whittlesea Water for All and the Biodiversity Strategy, and incorporates the emerging work on the Climate Change Plan, also presented for adoption, and the draft Green Wedge Management Plan. The Climate Change Plan will guide Council's work and partnerships with the community to transition our city to net zero emissions by 2036 and towards a climate resilient future. The Sustainable Environment Strategy Action Plan outlines the actions that we will propose to take over the next 2 years to help advance our environmental goals. These documents have been enhanced by the consultation with community, businesses, internal and external institutional partners, both during the development of the documents and in this last stage of consultation. The Sustainable Environment Strategy Suite will provide an integrated approach to drive council-wide sustainability and climate change actions across all of our services and operations. I present the paper for as is in the document. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. I'll just kick off with a quick question. I note within the officer report that there's mention of a launch or celebration in early 2023, and I wondered if you could give us any clues of what that might look like.
Well, it's going to be wonderful and very sustainable. We're looking to partner with all of the stakeholders we've been involved with in the development of this strategy to date to showcase and highlight the amazing action already underway across our community, and also to bring those community members on the journey with us as we go towards the next 10 years of delivery. And we will invite you all to attend, and everyone in the chamber today would like to attend. It would be awesome.
Thank you, Amanda, and you know we'll be delighted to attend as well. Other questions? No? Well, if not, I'm also, Amanda, very excited to move the officer recommendation for item 5.4.1 and just to... Oh, sorry, did I have a seconder? No. Sorry, my apologies.
I'll second.
Before I speak to it, do I have a seconder?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Administrator Duncan. Now I will speak to my excitement. I moved this item at the September 2022 Council meeting when officers obviously recommended at that time that this incredibly important suite of documents go out for further public exhibition. And as you have rightly highlighted, Amanda, this new strategy and plan are really going to shape our overall environmental priorities over the next 10 years and are such an important suite of documents. I'll again note, as I did at the September Council meeting, that this is the second major consolidation of our strategies into that integrated framework, and obviously the economic development was the other area prior to that. Extensive community consultation, it's well reflected in the council report, has already occurred to get to this point, and we're really appreciative of the input from residents and community land care groups, businesses, school children and industry stakeholders. And I think that the report really identifies very clearly the benefits of having had that final round of community consultation, because you do a really good summary within the report of how those additional comments have been captured within this final suite of documents. So there's clearly a number of additional actions, several ideas that have been referred for further consideration, and a number of items actually directly referred to service delivery areas of council. So I just want to again acknowledge the absolutely amazing efforts of our staff, and we're really thrilled to have with us this evening Min Jiang, who has been one of the major authors of this important suite of documents. And I reflected at the last meeting how very proud we were, because when I've read them, I just think they've been beautifully drafted. They're plain English. I noted that they simplify the complex and the very technical, and they're incredibly easy to navigate, and just the imagery and the way that they have been captured, it's just exceptional work. And I think what's so important is that they're succinct. All of those, the documents, the main overarching strategy, but all of the other documents are all 25 pages or less. So I just wanted to end on, again, appreciation to the many people, to the authors, our council staff that have just done an amazing job, and even if they're not our council staff anymore, but also to the amazing community and stakeholder feedback that we've had to get to this point. And I'll be delighted to attend the celebratory event in early 2023. Thank you. Peter, Administrator Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've, as usual, summed this up beautifully. I think it is a proud day for the City of Whittlesea and the staff, and it's an exceptional piece of work. And we do know that our residents in the municipality are very passionate about the environment and achieving clean and sustainable future for the city. So we've had a lot of interest in this, over 800 people who have contributed, which is just sensational to developing this strategy. So thank you to all of the community that did get involved. And I was just looking back through this report again, that we had all sorts going on, the pop-ups, focus groups and things like that. And just thank you to all of the officers that have been involved in this process, because it has been exceptional. So well done.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. Administrator Eddie.
Thank you, Chair. I can't not comment on this. This is so significant a piece of work, and I want to add my thanks to the team and to the community for the input into this. I'm just sitting here musing that we're hot on the heels of COP27, and I've been reading today about the ambiguity or the lack of clarity about what the actual outcomes from COP27 might be. There is no ambiguity or lack of clarity about where the City of Whittlesea wants to take this community forward in terms of climate action and sustainability. So congratulations to all.
Thank you, Administrator Eddie. And I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour, the motion is carried. Thank you again. Item 5.4.2, which is very related to the last item, is the City of Whittlesea climate pledges. And Debbie, if I could again invite you to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. Getting very comfortable here. But, and thank you for the acknowledgement of the staff for that last piece of work as well. Thank you very much for that. So, yes, this one is just, again, like you said, linked to the last report on, and this one's around the Whittlesea Climate Pledge. It's really important that we do leave a really positive legacy for future generations, and these type of pledges are going to help us do that, as will that past strategy. So I have Amanda here again just to talk to the report and the recommendation.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. This report seeks that Council resolves to join two programs, the City Powers Partnership and also the Victorian Government's Climate Emissions Reduction Pledge Program. This proposal will strengthen our climate action through broad-scale promotion, opportunities to network, access to resources that will all come as being part of these connected programs, giving us access to both state and national climate action. Participation in both the City Powers Partnership and the Victorian Government's Council Emissions Reduction Pledge Program are free to join with no ongoing or annual fees. And the officers believe that now it's the ideal time to join these collective emissions reductions efforts, as promotion of our activity can occur alongside the very recent adoption and of the Sustainable Environment Strategy Suite. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Any questions in relation to this item? No. I've got no questions either. So do I have a mover for the officer recommendation? Thank you, Administrator Eddy, and I'm happy to second the officer recommendations. Administrator Eddy.
Thank you, Chair. I think comments to the last item stand for this item too in terms of the relevance and the importance. I've been lucky enough to have done some work with the Climate Council wearing another hat, and the Cities Power Partnership is a terrific program that brings a lot of local governments together, not just in Victoria but around Australia, working on giving them the tools and the knowledge and making those connections that can help local government take meaningful action on climate change. So I'm very supportive of us joining the Cities Power Partnership program, but also taking the Victorian Government's Council emissions reduction pledges as well, which are another tangible way of making sure that our climate change initiatives will contribute to a more statewide climate action efforts. So happy to support this, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. I just simply reiterate the comment that Amanda made, that I think it's quite symbolic that we're resolving to join these two really important programs on the same night that we've resolved on our sustainable environment strategy and all the associated plans. So I don't know that Administrator Duncan wants to make any further comments, so I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you. You can have a rest now, Debbie. So if we move to item 5.5.1, Quarterly Corporate Performance Report, Quarter 1, and if I could introduce our Director of Customer and Corporate Services, Sarah Renner, and invite her to make a brief introduction to this report.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Debbie for warming up this chair. Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Aaron Gerard, our Acting Chief Financial Officer, to present on Council's Quarter 1 Corporate Performance Report.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. The purpose of the report is to present to Council the Quarterly Corporate Performance Report for the period ended 30th of September 2022, which covers the Community Plan Action Plan, Good Governance, Capital Works Performance and Financial Performance. Starting from a Community Plan Action Plan perspective, there are 125 key actions to be delivered in this financial year. Of the 125 key actions, 114 actions are reported on track, 9 actions reported to monitor, and 2 actions reported off track, with further detail included in the report. From a good governance perspective, in addition to conducting regular council meetings, Council has updated the governance rules, risk management and framework, policy, and completed personal interest returns to continue to enhance governance. From a capital works perspective, as at the 30th of September 2022, the year-to-date capital works expenditure of 9.7 million was 2.9 million ahead of budget. This was largely due to the road and footpath works progressing ahead of schedule and unbudgeted land acquisition at 1781 Donnybrook Road, Woodstock. The full year forecast as at 30th of September estimates capital works expenditure to be 1.8 million ahead of their annual budget. And this is primarily due to successful grant applications. Now, with that said, Council officers are currently undertaking a detailed review of the Capital Works program, and it is anticipated that officers will provide an indication of what projects have been impacted deliverability-wise in the Quarter 2 Corporate Performance Report. From a financial perspective, as at 30th of September 2022, Council recorded an operating surplus of 159.3 million, which was 566,000 unfavourable to the year-to-date budget. This is largely driven by operating grants as a result of 75% of the Victorian Grants Commission for 2022-23 being received and recognised last financial year, and this is in line with revenue recognition criteria. The outcome for the Quarter 1 forecast review is also included in this report, and Council is anticipating an operating surplus of $137.4 million, which is $3.9 million unfavourable to the adopted budget. I'd like to quickly touch on Council's operating surplus, highlighting to Council that this is often impacted early in the year by the timing of rate revenue being reported. It is also important to note that this is an accounting result only, and it is calculated to comply with the requirements of Australian accounting standards, and importantly does not constitute excess cash available for Council to spend. This is due to the fact that Council's surplus is largely made up of either non-cash items, such as asset contributions from developers, or cash items that are restricted by legislation in how they can be used in the future by Council. I propose the recommendations as outlined in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron, and that was a really comprehensive overview. Any questions, administrators? Administrator Eddy.
Thank you, Chair. Not sure why you're smiling. I just wanted to clarify, I think you may have misspoke. The $3.9 million against forecast for the full year, I thought you said that was unfavourable, but the report suggests it's favourable to the adopted budget. Can I just be certain of which?
Sorry. Thanks, Administrator Eddy. It is unfavourable to the adopted budget for operating, because it's a reduction in the surplus.
Right, okay. I'll just make the point that it does appear to say in the report that it's $3.9 million favourable, so that is a big difference. So, yes, I'll leave that with you just to see. In terms of this report at the first quarter, how much can we really draw from this? Obviously, circumstances change. I think the Grants Commission paying a big chunk of that money at the end of the last financial year has been happening for some time, yes?
That's correct, but it's normally 50%, and right. This time it was 75% that was received in advance.
Right, okay. So it's probably best to wait a bit longer before we draw too many conclusions, but it is good to get progress reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. Any further questions? No? So I'm happy to move the officer recommendation for item 5.5.1. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Administrator Eddy. I'll only make a couple of very brief points, and I think Administrator Eddy really highlights an important issue, which is this is really just quarter one. But nonetheless, I think that both the overall report and also the explanations throughout are very well done. And there's a few highlights, even though it is only quarter one, that I would just note. Aaron highlighted a number of good governance initiatives. I think that we constantly look at the way that we operate from a good governance perspective, and there's some very important items that have been identified within this quarter one report. I just wanted to highlight the continued success that we have in actively applying for and securing government grants, and again they're clearly articulated in the attachment 5.5.14. There's overall very good delivery against our adopted community plan action plan, and Aaron clearly identified the number of actions that are on track and the clear status of the ones that are either on track or just need to be monitored. Just congratulations to officers on a really comprehensive report and for that really great overview. Administrator Eddy.
Nothing to add, thank you, Chair.
All right, Administrator Duncan.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just to follow up on what you've said, all I really wanted to say was well done to the officers on such a very comprehensive report, and thank you to Aaron for being plain English and explaining what's going on, just for those that might be out in the community watching and for some of us here. It's refreshing, so thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 5.5.2, scheduled council meetings, and if I could invite our Executive Manager, Governance and Strategy, Frank Joyce, to speak to this item.
Thank you, Chair. I think this item is fairly self-explanatory. Under the governance rules, Council is required to set a schedule of council meetings in November each year for the subsequent year. The recommendation is to schedule the meetings from February through to December on the third Tuesday of the month, with the exception of the June meeting being the fourth Tuesday of the month due to potential clash with the National General Assembly that will be happening in June. It's also recommended that 3 of the scheduled meetings be based in community at community activity centres in February, May and October. And these meetings would be commencing at 7:30 instead of 6:30, and to enable a community forum to be held before those meetings. So I'm pleased to put forward the report with the recommendations, which ultimately enables Council and the community to be really clear about when Council will be meeting and encourage community participation as part of these Council meetings for 2023.
Thank you, Frank. Administrators, any questions? No? So do I have a mover for the officer recommendation for item 5.5.2?
Happy to move this one, Chair.
Thank you. And Administrator Eddy seconded. And Administrator Duncan, would you like to speak?
Why not? I'd just like to say thank you to Frank and his team for putting this together, but very, very pleased that we have 3 meetings in the community next year. And I'm very much looking forward to that, and hopefully people will come along and join us.
Well said. Thank you, Administrator Duncan. Administrator Eddy?
Nothing to add. Thank you, Chair.
I've got nothing to add either, so I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. I note that there's no notices of motion. Administrators, are there any items of urgent business? No items of urgent business. So if we could perhaps just move to reports of council representatives and the CEO update, and if I could take the liberty of starting with a report from myself. It's been a very, very busy past month. I've been attended a number of the committees to which I've been appointed, namely I had a meeting of the Yarra Plenty Regional Library Corporation during this period. I chair the Finance, Audit and Risk Subcommittee of Whittlesea Community Connections and had a meeting of that group. And importantly, I, alongside other administrators, attended the CEO Employment Matters Advisory Committee meeting. But a few other highlights of the last month was the launch of the strategic vision and priorities of the Northern Councils Alliance. The fact that we've gone out on a number of site visits during this period, and we reflected today that critical items on the council agenda, we've really got out and about to visit those sites. But in addition, we went to the Mazda Distribution Centre in Epping and Crusader Caravans in Epping, and we also went to a site visit at Oxacare, which is a major aged care facility about to open shortly. Also, there's been a number of important funding announcements by candidates over this last month. So I attended the funding announcement by Lauren Cathage of the Regional Sports and Aquatic Centre in Mernda, and also by Paige Yap regarding Red Leap Sport Oval upgrade in Mill Park. It was wonderful to be there with my colleagues in relation to the official opening of the Mill Park Basketball Stadium refurbishment, and we had a number of ministers and local members of Parliament in attendance that day alongside our CEO and a number of directors. Coffee with Council has just proven to be an absolute highlight of my time. I know, I look over at Debbie Wood, who may not say likewise, because it does seem that a lot of the issues that have come to the forefront, resident concerns relate to open space management. But we did a special Coffee with Council session at Lifestyle Lindarum in Wollert, which was really absolutely fantastic. And just more recently, we did another Coffee with Council at the Whittlesea Township. And again, that was really well received, and we've got lots of really good engagement with residents. I also had the privilege of briefly speaking at the Refugees, Your Community, Your Health forum at Epping Memorial Hall, and this was an event hosted by the City of Whittlesea and the Program for Refugee Immunisation Monitoring and Education Prime, which is a most amazing program that we're responsible for and sits in Kate McCackey's area. And then I would just note that I attended another citizenship ceremony. Again, we're really trying to ramp up citizenship and ensure that we minimise the backlog of our new citizens, and that occurred on the 17th of November. We mentioned we had that important site visit to the Gorge Road shops and another one to Mill Park Library. And then I also attended as an observer at the Yan Yean candidate Q&A forum at Whittlesea Community Activity Centre, which was hosted by Whittlesea Community Futures and facilitated by Barry Cassidy. So it's been a really busy but incredibly productive period. And I'm happy to respond to any questions administrators might have. So if not, I might invite Administrator Duncan to also provide a report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be fairly quick because we've been to the same places, so I'm not going to repeat those, and they'll be in the minutes for others to look at. I did just want to comment on the Lifestyle Lindarum Coffee with Council we went to, and thank all of those residents for having us. It was fantastic. But also just to add in here that myself and Administrator Eddie paid a visit to the Whittlesea Bakehouse last week, which was just phenomenal, as best pie in Australia. So thank you to them, but that was whilst we were out looking at other sites. And just thank you to all the businesses that have opened their arms to us to come in and have a look. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. Any questions of Administrator Duncan? No? Administrator Eddie, could I invite you to also provide an update?
Thank you, Chair. I probably should have asked Administrator Duncan a question because I noticed there was no mention of the vanilla slice she consumed in my presence. But it certainly was one of the highlights of our recent visits, going to the Whittlesea Bakehouse. I was fortunate enough to have some leave, but there's still been a little bit to do in the last few weeks since I've been back, including some of those events that you mentioned. The Oxacare site sticks in my mind as being quite extraordinary, that facility that we've got right here in the city of Whittlesea that will be open, I think, early next year. And the Coffee with Council at Lifestyle Lindarum was also a very enjoyable exercise to be part of. What I thought I might mention, Chair, is a couple of highlights from Naga this last quarter. As you know, I represent the council on the executive there, and from the latest quarterly report, I thought I'd point out that there's quite a bit of work being done through Naga in the electric vehicle charging infrastructure space, and Naga's secured funding for 3 member councils for that type of infrastructure, and is project managing the delivery of zero-emission fleet transition plans for 5 of its member councils, and is also involved in a number of cross-greenhouse alliance projects, such as the All-Electric Councils Working Group, which is identifying collaboration opportunities to help councils move off gas in their operations, on the Project Advisory Group for the Wagga-led Victorian Climate Resilience Council program, and supporting the local government renewable project, that VICO project that so many councils are involved in, I think 46 as of last count. But also a pretty special task. NAGA's working with the Women's Environmental Leadership Australia group to deliver a leadership course for women in local government working in climate change, and that short course will run next May. So I thought it worth highlighting some of the great work that NAGA is doing, of which we are a part. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Eddy. Any questions? No? If I could now ask the CEO to provide an update to both the Council and members of the public.
Thank you, Chair, and I hope people can hear me over the torrential rain on the broadcast. So the Mernda Social Services Support Hub facility construction is well underway and is expected to be completed in early 2023. The facility, when opened, will provide vital support services to older residents with complex health needs who reside in our municipalities north. And this will mean that residents will no longer have to travel to Laylaw, Mill Park or Epping North to access those services. Just some construction updates. The HRUN Recreation Reserve construction has started on the pavilion in Thomastown. That's well underway. The Sycamore BMX track, the asphalt works have now finished. We've had some great feedback from the users there, and just wanted to note that that one actually was included in the budget this year as a result of community submissions and the engagement process on last year's budget. So these things do happen. Just an update on roadworks. So through to the end of October, about $2 million has been expended this financial year on Council's 2 road renewal programs. That equates to more than 52,000 square metres of road pavement. That's 3 times the playing surface of the MCG, just to put that into context. That's about 7.1 kilometres of road, 3.4 kilometres of curb reconstruction, and 7,597 tonnes of asphalt. Work on stage 1 of the Epping Rec Reserve car park and access roads is almost finished, and we're also addressing major underground erosion issues. Those works have now concluded at the Grandview Court in Beveridge, and the Findon Road extension, long awaited that one, is nearing completion, is expected to be open in the next couple of weeks. Cullineck Recreation Reserve, the $675,000 redevelopment of the Rec Reserve playground and social gathering spaces in Mill Park is underway. That redevelopment comes after Council finalised the Recreation Reserve Master Plan late last year and outlined a vision for raising the standard of that space. And finally, on capital works, the work is underway to replace a 50-year-old amenities block on the site of the former Whittlesea Courthouse up in Whittlesea Township. That toilet block will be replaced with a state-of-the-art, fully automatic self-cleaning set of public toilets. New paved pathways and lighting connecting the toilets to the courthouse and to the street will also make the facility access compliant. Congratulations to our staff and all the partner agencies that were involved in the Whittlesea Volunteer Expo last weekend, so this just past Saturday. We had 17 local community groups and organisations gather here at Civic Centre to promote roles in volunteerism, and that expo saw more than 250 people of all ages come through and learn about all the opportunities there are to volunteer in the city of Whittlesea. We've also had, in the last week or two, Council's annual art exhibition opened. This year's theme is New Light and includes the work of over 75 local artists, and I know our chair was one of the judges on that. The exhibition in the Great Hall runs through to Thursday the 15th of December and is open Monday to Friday from 10 till 4. I had the honour of presenting those awards, so big congratulations for the Whittlesea Art Award goes to Lei Sui. The Award of Excellence for Innovative Use of Materials was to Connie Panisi. The Award of Excellence and the responding to the theme to Michelle Dyer. Award of Excellence for Creative Expression went to Mohammed Aboume. And the Ilma Duncan Award went to the artist named Pond Hawk. I had the real pleasure of attending last week the final session of the Community Leadership Programme for 2022, the first year of that programme. Had more than 60 participants attended the event at PRAC, where we heard from some of the participants who got to showcase and celebrate their work and networking during the course. It was a really good first year, really good buzz in the room. The course was heavily oversubscribed, and we'll be announcing some dates for next year's programme soon. And just a thank you to La Trobe University's School of Business, the Victorian Local Governance Association and the Public Value Studio, who are our partners on that programme. And finally, I just wanted to cover off on the current situation with the long grass across the municipality, and I may well need a time extension for that, please.
I think you might as well. Could I move that there is an extension of time of up to 3 minutes for the CEO to continue his report? Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Administrator Duncan. All those in favour? Administrator? The motion is carried.
Thank you. I will be brief.
Craig.
So like many areas across Melbourne, the long grass is very much prevalent across the municipality at the moment. I think we're all aware of that. Whilst the weather has played a part in this, and some areas will need to dry out a lot more before machines can take in to mow, we are actively working with our maintenance contractors to address these concerns. So we appreciate that people in our community are frustrated and concerned, as are we, and we're hearing that loud and clear. So I just want to make it very clear that this is a priority for us, and Council is committed to presenting us our parks, reserves and roadsides to the standard that our community expects and deserves as quickly as we can. We're posting now updates on a daily basis to our website, detailing where maintenance crews have been and also where they're headed next. Unfortunately, though, the ongoing heavy rain, as I mentioned at the beginning, we could hardly hear ourselves in the chamber, the ongoing heavy rain is continuing to impact our ability to access many areas and allow us to catch up on the schedule. We will keep the community updated, and hopefully as things start to dry out, we'll be able to get on top of those maintenance schedules as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions of Craig? No? I'd probably just make a comment. It's not a question, but just to acknowledge your comprehensive report. I think it's really important to provide that update, but equally in relation to open space management and maintenance, just to acknowledge, clearly as administrators we're also well aware that that is an issue of concern to our residents, and I think the way that you've articulated the position of management in relation to your oversight of that particular issue is really important from a public perspective, so thank you for that. Can I note that all of these verbal reports will actually be documented in the minutes? I note that there's no confidential business, and so that brings us to the end of the meeting, and therefore I declare the meeting closed at 8:35 p.m. Thank you, everyone.